It's about to start right now. Welcome back, creative community. Are we online? Are we live and direct? Can you hear me clearly? Let me give you this welcome, this heartfeltly welcome to the COACHMC studio because it's always a pleasure. It's always exciting to transmit live and direct what we've collect throughout the weeks, throughout the months, throughout the years to give you always the best support, the best tools, the best acting and performance instruments so you can really implement those right away, grow bigger with these tools, and kind of ramp up your performance, kind of step up your display of artistic abilities and put in some more passion and passion and traction. That's what I wanted to say. So that's what we're here for. Welcome back to the COACHMC studio. Welcome back, creative community. It's such a pleasure to share this video and live session and this great chat with you. So join the chat room, ask us questions, because today it's all about an acting breakdown of a movie that had huge success, huge impact, and from which we can learn so much. Because like I always like to say, it's not about to venerate, it's about to analyze, to extrapolate and then replicate, right? Just put it into action, not just only be affected by it, by understand, but how you can reverse engineer it for your own artistic purposes. Of course, it's always nice to enjoy something, but then my mind kind of immediately creates the bridge and wants to know and reverse engineer the process, because there, I think, is the biggest treasure for us all. And since we know what works, from that we can know what we can implement for ourselves and for our own mission, for our own artistic quest. And that's the beauty of connecting, of creating these environments. So welcome to the COACHMC studio. Let me know how you guys are. Annie Boo, hello. Lorenzo, nice to see you again. I hope you're doing good. I'm sick and bad. I'm sorry to hear that. So maybe this is like an energetic boost. All the best from the COACHMC studio. Rosita is also joining the show tonight. What a pleasure. What an honor. Thank you, Rosita. Hi, Coach. Hi, back. And this is a great night tonight because we're getting a nice response from our acting breakdowns, and it's beautiful to see that you guys can drain something from it. For us, it's also a great pleasure because we can also, keep up with the latest developments, keep up with the latest currents, keep up what's coming up, and observe all these trends. We can use it for ourselves, but also kind of recuperate the most important tools and show them to you and discuss about it, and let's see if there is something that we can use for our own purposes. So tonight there is this acting breakdown of the legendary movie Coda, which had this incredible success all over the globe. It was nominated 132 times internationally and has won over 61 awards, including 3 Oscars for Best Movie, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor. It has won 4 Sundance Festival Awards and Screen Actors Guild Awards. It's unbelievable what this movie has done so far and has created such a hype. And it was so interesting how people kind of dealt with the whole issue of the movie and the storyline, that we thought this is highly interesting. And it's so interesting also because the way the movie enrolls and the people that are interacting in this incredible story, how they do that and how we can appreciate that type of behavior and what we can learn from that. For us, that was here at the COACHMC studio, like the biggest takeaway right away, to say, what, we have to do an acting breakdown of this feature. And so I'm really pumped to do this. Let me welcome everybody in the chat room. We got Annie Boo. I didn't watch Coda, but I'm sure I can learn something nevertheless. Yes, probably you can. So hopefully we can give you some tools that are tangible that you can use. Care Life Services, welcome to the show, man. Doing great. Let's get it. Absolutely. Wonderful. Good evening, Carola Pinkert. Great awakening. Thank you for coming by, stopping by, guys. So let's dive right into it. So what is Coda? It is in the coming of age type of story about a 17 years old girl that wants to break free from her difficult environment. She discovers a talent inside of herself, and she is she's struggling between 2 forces. She's caught up in this very strong treadmill, moral treadmill, I might say, an ethical treadmill, I might say, about the obligations that she has to fulfill with her family, with the family business, and the way they need her, and the wish to become a star and fulfill her dream, and kind of explore her talent more and more, and having fun with what she actually loves to do most and above everything. And so that's kind of a classical setup, if you might think about it, even though this is partially this is a remake of a French movie. Do you understand the Bélier? Or yes, do you understand the Bélier? A wonderful French comedy, also a drama in a way. And partially Sian Heder, what she did, the director of this movie, she also inserted it in her movie Legendarium, because actually this is a sequel. This movie is the second part of a movie that started with Tula that she directed a couple of years ago that had also quite an impact. So the interesting way of seeing this movie is that usually when we talk about movies, we talk about what the actor is giving us in terms of speeches, monologues, and wit and charm, and the way he kind of responds to things and what he says, and all these funny moments that are happening, the tragic moments that are happening, and how the actor is kind of catching up with us through his communication and the way he involves us into his world by what he's saying, right? We understand his life, his meanings, his passions, his wishes, most of the times through what he says, what he declares, what he kind of talks about in the movie with his partners, with the people he's involved in the story. And this time, that is partially gone. It is just told by the actions of the actors, what they are displaying with their body, and in a way also turning that inside world out to demonstrate exactly what their mood is and what they're feeling. Because the nice hook, the nice twist of that story is, yes, we have that coming of age type of setup, but then the twist, and caught in between those responsibilities, it's not about an evil stepmother that forces the girl, right, to do something, and to clean up all the time, and is forcing her to give up on her dreams because she wants her for her own services. No, this time she's caught up in a moral responsibility, because the nice twist of the story is that she's the only member of the family who actually hears and speaks, where the other part of the family just speaks through the sign language, because they're all deaf. Mother, father, and the brother, Leo Rossi, Frank Rossi, and Jackie Rossi, they are all deaf. And she, Ruby Rossi, is the only part that kind of, is sort of a bridge. She is the pontifex. She creates the bridge to the world of the, of reality, where people actually speak and hear, to the noise world, right? She is the translator between those two different forces. And so she's caught up nicely by this story in this very primordial, very mythological twist between the duty and the wish. And that is kind of nice to begin with. And it gives the character a very compelling critical mass upon which Emilia Jones really acts stupendously. She does a marvelous job. I mean, talking about what we can learn from this movie, we will dive right now into the nitty-gritty of the technical aspects of what we can kind of use for our own artistic delivery, and what we can use right away in the audition room. And when it comes to performance, what is so important and impactful about this movie, and how we can reverse engineer these processes. We will do that right now. But it's it's interesting to kind of tell this little setup, because it gives us right away the perspective of how does somebody train, how does somebody work, how does somebody live another life that is based on something that we take for granted, but actually in that world it is totally normal to be the other way around. So as a character that works as a bridge, where it is a transition between one system and the other system, between one belief and the other belief, between one world and the other world, right, quite literally, it is beautiful to see how you have that kind of transitioning movement all the time, right? And kind of flickering and pulsating all the time between one and the other magnetic pole of the stories, between blue and red. And so right away, we have something very fundamental, very, very basic, that we can always apply and implement in our audition prep whenever we have to, hold a big speech, whenever there's a monologue coming up, or we get called into the audition room. We are always caught up in between forces. It's all about blue and red all the time. It's all about what we love. It's all about what we fear and what we're most scared of. And it's all about overcoming that fear, overcoming that obstacle, and living with the collision and living with the force that is clashing with your belief system, with your wishes, with your desires to become something marvelous. And how you deal with that shows a great deal what kind of character you are, and that gives entertainment and sorrowness and something to think about to the audience, right? And that is so beautiful about this setup that worked quite well throughout the whole movie. Better, I feel I've been better served in the second part of the movie, but the first part was also kind of hard to kind of get into, because quite literally you had to read what was going on, right? You couldn't hear anything, and that was also partially the magic, of course, but sometimes you were kind of thrown off by that because you weren't really catching what the mimical expression of the actor was doing in that very moment. You weren't quite catching the magical glimpse and the moment. And so you had to kind of tune in into that and relax a little bit more and see it, I think, from a far further kind of, type of standpoint. So really perceive the whole picture, not looking too much into the details, and getting the conceptual flow of the scene, and rather sticking to the acting instead of looking to the captions, because you were eager to understand what they were kind of expressing and signing in, right? Which was very fascinating to watch. But again, like in the beginning, in the first part of the movie, it was a bit throwing me off, I have to admit. And then it kind of all the points and all, the first clashes that kind of got introduced, the first drama points of the story, I think they were better handled in the second part of the movie. So it kind of took a while to get in, to get traction, to get sucked in into the storyline, into the plot, and really kind of understanding and absorbing the environment they were kind of creating for the audience. But then it kind of worked well. And I have to admit, by the end, some tear was coming down, and I was really moved by certain scenes and by some highlights and some really nice peaks of storytelling and acting along the way of the story. So let me just read a couple of comments, because I see people already kind of jumping in, and that's beautiful, before we get into the technical part. It's a moral treadmill. Yes, it is. Like, that's how I see the way that Ruby was in, right? It was kind of, difficult for her to choose where to go, where to stand, what to believe in. And I think she did a great job in showing that, without exaggerating, without putting too much pressure, too much moral weight, and too much exhaustness. I mean, I could see her being fatigued by being, this 17 years old girl that, started to kind of exploring herself as well, and her hormones and her, puberty and growing up and having other wishes and desires, besides, serving the family, working on a fish crawler, stinking like hell throughout the day, and being bullied by the high school society that she was in, and at the same time being of essential need for the family to kind of run the business, to kind of communicate with bureaucracy and administration and all that. So she was, moving around and working all day, constantly, 24/7, waking up very, very early. And so this pressure, at a certain point, it was too much to bear. And I think she showed that in a very great way. I watched the movie, Rosita says. Oh, Rosita, cool. I watched the movie. Actors were great. I guess they all shared a unique experience. Absolutely. I want to dive into that in a couple of seconds. That's so powerful. Just keep that thought. Absolutely. I'm going to clink into that, because that's one of the keys of this movie for sure. Serena Tasinato, non ho mai visto questo film. Vedrò di guardarlo. Sicuramente possiamo sempre imparare cose nuove. Grazie Lorenzo e buona serata. Serena just shared that she hasn't seen the movie so far, but she surely is going to watch it. And there's always something new to learn and to explore, for sure. That's one of our great flags, leading lights here at the COACHMC studio. By the way, if you haven't so far, please make sure to subscribe, right? Hit the bell button, activate that bell so you get notified every time we grind out new content. You stay up to date with the latest developments, the latest acting breakdowns, and some new stuff, of course, always coming in when it's about audition prep, when it's about getting ready for the big day, getting ready for a nice self-tape adventure, or like really working on a monologue. Always new tips, acting tips coming out. So make sure to be part of our creative community, guys. Absolutely. So what is so important about this movie is that from a technical standpoint, there is something quite unique going on. Like usually we speak out loud, we say things, right, in the audition, when we communicate with the other world before we act. Of course there are some reactions, but usually it's our mouth dictating the rhythm, right? It's our speech showing what we're planning to do, showing what we're capable of, and all that. So we are so used to our voice, to our words, we take it for granted, and we just start saying things as soon as we have the sides in our hands. As soon as we have the new assignment at our hands, we start kind of memorizing the lines, saying the words out loud, and by all means that's very cool, right? Talking about audition prep, of course we need to tune in with the character, but since we live in a time that is overly saturated with information, with noise, with sounds, with ads, with people who are trying to gain your attention, right, to get something out of your awareness, and since everybody's craving for that awareness, for that attention, and everybody's kind of signaling and putting some information out, I feel like this movie reminded me of the importance of stillness, of quietness, of responsibility towards the words. Because if you just have a few things to say, or even sometimes just a few tones, right? You kind of put some importance, you put some weight into that balance. You make sure that that cup is filled with some critical juice, with some great mass, because you just got a few shots. You just got a few shots to kind of land that target, to really be there with the audience, to really connect with the other character in the scene. And when everything that we have is our body and our eyes, our face, and the voice is just not there because it needs to be expressed through other mechanisms and tools, the way of how we channel that force of emotion, that being there in the moment and reacting to the circumstances, to the imaginary circumstances that the plot is delivering to us, that I feel is a very important message that we can learn from this movie right away, straight away. Like, look how they were in tune with their bodies. We take it for granted on how we speak, but do we take it for granted on how we move and how we look when we move? Do we really know how the body of this imaginary character actually feels like, and what he behaves like, and yes, what it sounds like, and what it smells like? Do we know about these nuances? Because again, we are just acting from a rational standpoint most of the times, and we're speaking so much, and we need to kind of frame the words and put the right emphasis underneath the words, and put some traction behind the words, right? We deal with the words because usually they are our instruments, our weapon of choice to kind of impact the audience. This is what the author is giving us to kind of express his world and his thoughts and what the characters are going through. When you don't have the words anymore, you have to rely on your body. You have to rely on your core expression, your core essence. What is the message here for real? Right? There are no smoke screens anymore. There are no clouds obfuscating, right, the core, because now you don't have any words anymore to cover. So I feel this is a very good exercise to kind of unpack yourself, to let go of old shit, to really be in that moment and really accept the challenge of getting stripped naked in front of that camera, even though you have some clothes on, but to really kind of transmit, and be translucent with that core message and the way that you express it. And so this is a great exercise for us actors that have the privilege to speak, right? Because it is a privilege. It is beautiful to speak, to make compliments, to sing, and all that. And imagine you don't have that. So one good thing would be, one great takeaway would be, just don't speak for 15 minutes every day. Just try to rehearse quietness and stillness. I'm not talking about the meditational part of your day, which of course can include some quietness and stillness, but I mean like really focusing, like, if you got a role, if you got an audition going on, before you start speaking with that character, with that role, try to be quiet with that role. Try to have silence and find quietness and stillness with that role. Try to really perceive the imagined environment with that role and take that in, perceive it for real. Because the actors in this movie, like the core family, the family, the four actors who did that, and everybody around them, they had this very impactful relationship to quietness and how it affected them and what it made for them and what was the, what were the pros and the cons. They kind of showed that beautiful of being not being able to speak. What is actually the positive aspect of that, of being deaf, right? And there were some. They were showing that humor can be different. The perception of having a conspirational gathering of family that is so cohesive and is so close, and they are so supporting each other's, and and each other's, and keeping their bags right clean and safe. That was a beautiful aspect, and that could only be achieved by that, you know by that quietness, by that other type of environment that they shared all together. That was something quite unique. And that is something that we can learn, because having that perception of us, not while we speak, but when we are still, actually, when we are silent, when we have a beat, when we have a break, when we're listening to someone and really trying to absorb through our observations what this other character is trying to tell us, what this other person is truly meaning with what she's trying to tell us, with what she's trying to give us, with what she's trying to express. Does that make sense? Please let me know in the comment section below, because I think that's a fundamental point. It's the actions that rather speak for the character in this movie rather than the words. And that's so fascinating. What the character is going through in the scene is shown and displayed by the actions, by the quietness, by other moments, instead of what the character is actually saying. Because a character can say so many things, but most of the times it's a lie, it's a cover up. It's actually not what the character is thinking. Here, this shield is not there, right? So there is this hull breach into the inner world that needs to be handled in a very elegant way. Otherwise, it kind of throws off the audience. And I think the actors, this family core, did a great job of kind of upholding that gathering of and having that conspirational kind of appeal to it. That was really marvelous. And then I think that is something that we can absolutely implement also for us and our endeavors. Instead of always trying to speak and sound smart, why don't you try to sound like somebody, even if though you are not speaking, even though you are not saying one single word? Try to express something just by looking, just by staring, just by feeling it, just by evoking it and summoning it inside of yourself, and having it so clear and so condensed for yourself that it kind of creates that tension, on top of your skin, and that kind of emanates and transmits and impacts the audience more than everything that you can say. Body language, behavior, that's big chunk of any great acting performance, of any great communicational performance, right? We need to connect with our audience. So exercise this. The non-communication. What is the non-communication telling you? That was a great part also of the setup of every scene, when the family was speaking with each other and communicating with each other and kind of clashing against each other and celebrating with each other. Like, the non-communicational part was always stronger than saying something. It was really what the actor was getting, and then kind of, like we are saying, right? It's analyzing deeply what the other character meant, let that sink in, and kind of extrapolate the sense out of it, and then kind of reply to that. And so you could see that mechanism. Again, it was kind of hard to follow, and I think it's also a part of how it was shot and everything, which actually was a good work. Like photography, I think, did a great work in terms of colors, in terms of having a simple and clear language. It was very focused. It was very quiet, and yeah, they balanced these moments out between the crisis that was going on the fish market, the crisis that was going on in the family, and the awakening of the girl with the sea, the boat, just being out there and having that peak of fresh air and breathing. That was kind of nicely balanced, and how the whole story was kind of, you know, pulled through the storyline visually. Also, I think they did a good job. Absolutely, they did. But most of all, it was the intention of every actor in the scene to give its very best to kind of uphold that magic, to uphold that realistic type of setup of this storyline, which of course in a way is it's crazy to even think about, right? Working as fisher people, right? Fishermen's being on the boat, on the fish crawler every day, fishing out and selling everything and communicating with sign language and having a translator that it's actually a girl, and she needs to go to college, and you have debts and prices are always going down for what you get paid. So you have that collision of how, to make ends meet, but still having a great family and trying to have that life still, nonetheless, all the problems that are going on in the world. And I think that's something that everybody can relate to, whether deaf or not. I mean, this is something that we're all going through. And that I think, since also all the characters had their own story, their little bubble, in which they had their own obstacles and struggles and problems they had to go through, and everybody had a different problem. That was nice, because you could really relate to every single character, and it made the whole story believable. And so when you go through a movie like that, it's when everything works, some people say, right, there is nothing to really kind of take from that, because if everything works, then everything seems so flawless and so smooth, and it's perfect, and you don't really understand, and you don't even notice what was done in the first place. But in this movie, since it wasn't that mind-blowing movie, maybe like the hype that is kind of right now happening around that movie, it was a very, very good movie. I feel like 10 years ago, this movie would happen more often than it is now. And I think that's also partially because why it's getting all this attention and traction right now, because it kind of peaks out from the cloud and from the midst of many, many remakes, and that weren't so good, or weren't so passionate, or weren't so intended. Here I feel there's a lot of passion, a lot of love to detail, and it was really about making a great movie come alive. And so you kind of feel that there is this unique experience of the characters going through that wonderful story. And even though it wasn't completely mind-blowing and amazing, it functioned throughout the whole movie. But still, there are certain things and certain aspects that we as actors can absolutely get immediate access to if we just look at it a bit closer, magnify it a bit closer for our own endeavors. By the way, if you got that wish to kind of magnify your talents, to kind of look at your talents under a magnifying glass and put that lens over what you're great at, and put that lens over the things that you're not so good at, and kind of reboot and restart your system a little bit. If you have that intention of creating something unique and remarkable for yourself, whether that's a self-tape, a monologue, whether you have to prepare a big speech, make sure to visit us at the COACHMC.studio and send us an email, send us a message, and let's set up a free trial session, like in a half hour, 45 minutes, just to get to know each other. And maybe we find out we're a great match for each other. Maybe we find out there's something that we can do for each other. Maybe we'll find out that there's a great adventure ahead. And so let's work on your communication. Let's work on your acting skills. Let's work on something that's really important to you, and to you only, where you feel you have to develop, where you feel you have to improve, where you feel you have to kind of add a new spice to your ingredients, to kind of step up your game a little bit. So then make sure to contact us at the COACHMC.studio. Write me something nice, like a nice email. Hey, the Coach MC, what's going on? Let's work together. Let's have fun. Let's conquer the world, right? Let's do that. Absolutely. Let's have fun. Let's put something into our basket that is completely unique, that smells like novelty, and that will blow people away. Let's do that all together, right? And also follow me on Instagram, where it's the Coach MC, where I got some art stuff going on as well, and some other adventures that are truly fun and entertaining, as well as other acting tips and some shorts. And we got a new brand joining the game, which is our TikTok channel. So make sure also to jump to our TikTok and follow me there. It's the Coach MC Studio as well, where we have our TikToks, acting tactics going on, where we kind of condense in a hyper compressed way what we learn throughout the weeks, and we give the best medicine out to you, so you really can impact your audience and have great success inside of the audition room. Because remember, you can only remarkable share if you are uniquely prepared. Otherwise it doesn't work. Otherwise it's mediocre. Otherwise it smells and tastes like everything else, and it has that bland feeling and nothing that really kind of represents you. So let's make sure that that won't happen anymore in your life throughout your artistic quest. But let's get back to Coda. Second, second most important thing that I got out of this movie that I think we can use right away, and that is generally also one of the things that, besides the words that we take for so granted, it is how we perceive our environment and how we are, as characters immersed into the storyline. Because the great thing about watching a movie that is partially without any speech, where there are no words, it's just the expression of the sign language that is building up the word in your mind later on. So you really can, be impacted by the voice, by the frequency, by the resonance. So you need to be impacted by something else, right? We spoke about the importance of quietness and observing yourself and really perceiving yourself and who you are without even saying something as the character, and kind of, immersing yourself into the character before you even say a line, which is truly important. But then second of all, it's also generally interesting to kind of see how the character then behaves, right? What is it that the character is doing when he's stressed out, when he's happy, when he's horny, when he's high, when he's drunk, when he's full of angry, when he's upset, when he's doing all these things, right? So first, admit the silence and the quietness, but then also explore the boundaries of the behavior. And I think here also, Sian Heder, I think she did a great job in directing these terrific actors through this, this quest of expressing so much through that kind of behavioral state, behavioral condition that they were, in constantly, because there was this pressure, there was the conflict, there was everybody that was sick of something. Every character of the family was sick of something. If you think about it, like Ruby Rossi, she was sick of being in this moral treadmill, of being kind of right pulverized and molecularized by this constant pressure of her wishing to break out, but the moral responsibility and the duties that she had to fulfill for her family, that she was truly loving, and she wanted to be there for them, and she loved everybody dearly. But at the same time, of course, she was about to become a woman, and she felt that there was maybe another path for her paved, just waiting for her to kind of accept that challenge. And so that was hard, and she was sick of being in this kind of moral treadmill, in this very kind of ethical clash inside of herself between the forces of evil and the forces of good. And then you had Frank, the dad, Troy Kotsur, playing this in a very, very rough and grumpy, but very competent, very warm-hearted, heart-felted way that was never too much. Maybe a few glances here and there, but overall it was so believable. It was so coming from the heart. It was so generous in the way he was acting. He was so in there, in that rugged, rough world. He was like part of the canvas, part of the painting. You could absolutely believe that he was part of that surrounding, of that environment. And that's what I mean. He's, in kind of enweaved, he entrenched himself and soaked that world in, absorbed that in that behavior and that posture, and how he was, holding back sometimes and giving out sometimes. That kind of switch between being scared or not being self-aware or still having doubts, and but also wanting to break out of that system, of that fish market trading system with the union that wasn't really working, where you kind of had to pay more than you would actually have as income, and of the challenges of not making ends meet, of not being able to feed the family. Like in the end, it was very essential for him, and he was sick of that, of not being able to speak out, of being treated badly. And if you think about Marlee, Matlin, his wife Jackie, also she was sick of being just the wife of Frank, of not really being part of society and the environment that was going on in that little town, right? Of not really connecting to the speaking community, of not being surrounded by any other from the deaf community, and so when the business was also evolving and everything was kind of following up in the story, you could clearly see her conflict with the fact that if that business would actually blow up, if it would actually work, that business idea that was developed throughout the movie by the family of making more money and having a fairer treatment, if that a business would actually work out, it would cut her off, because now she was, what would she do then, right? Because Ruby was translating all the time. The guys were the fishermen working on a fish crawler. And so what was her mission then in this family, instead, just besides feeding Frank and making sure that everybody's kind of taken care of, which of course is it's super great and heavy responsible and a wonderful duty and something that is absolutely sacred. But at the end, I mean, you want to kind of, self-develop yourself as well. And then you had the brother, the older brother, who was actually the first kid of this family, but he was kind of sided out. He feels this way. That's his projection. Also played in a great way by Daniel Duran. Like, this family was played in a great way by all the actors and explored in a magnificent way. And he was nice to watch as well, because he felt like now he could take over the family and the business and have more responsibility. But everybody was looking to Ruby, because she was the only one who was able to communicate with the village, with the union, and with the administration. So he felt like, no, we can do this on our own. We don't need you all the time, right? Somebody might give me some more responsibility, but if you're always kind of taking that from me, you're doing much more than you actually should, and I'm doing less than I actually could. So his conflict was beautiful as well. And by that, you could really understand the environment, and you could understand the behavior of each and every one of these people in there. Just 1 second for this fresh sip of water. And I think that was really cool. Like, from the setup, from the way it was set up, it was really, it was really cool, because in the first part of the movie, we're focusing about the family. We're focusing about, understanding their world, their environment, their problems, their clashes, their conflicts. And then suddenly we were discovering the talent of Coda, which, means the only one that is hearing, right? The only hearing member of the family. That is actually the explanation of the name Coda. And that was the nickname of Ruby. And then we transition to the second part, where the story is a bit more evolving, and where it gets to the apex, to the real climax of this whole film. And from there on, there are some other elements coming in, like the music coach played by Eugenio Derbez. He was got a great interpretation, and he's this flamboyant extrovert, very passionate, very demanding musical coach who's joining the high school, and he's directing a choir. And so it's beautiful to kind of have some other elements sparkling up the story later on. But like, really think about that. Like, how cool is that? How cool is that for an actor to really explore the world, not only by the words, but by the intentions, by the expressions of really giving time to yourself, to find the right pace, to trust in the moment, to trust in the relationship, to trust in the connection, to trust that the environment is being told in a realistic and authentic way, to trust in the believability of its own challenges. How cool is that to explore that without even saying that much, right? By just living it. And I think that is what's actually the most interesting part of this movie. It is to observe behavior. If you think about I Am Legend with Will Smith, right? The first 20 minutes were so cool about that movie, because you were just observing behavior. There was nothing else. It was this guy repeating his actions over and over again, day in, day out, believing in his survival. And that was so great to watch. That's what's so interesting about Castaway and about other movies in that kind of topic field, where they would just be alone or secluded, or just a group away from the outer world. And so kind of getting in touch with that behavior, that was so interesting to watch and so interesting to kind of follow how they would actually evolve and what their clashes were leading to and how they would actually overcome all those obstacles. That was, for me, by far the most interesting part. And by far also the greatest telling part for us actors, like to really trust in that moment, to really take your time to believe in what your behavior is telling more than what your words can actually say and mean. That is so, so cool because it's about reverse engineering the process. And it strips you naked of all the unnecessary tools and all the unnecessary flaws, where you can actually channel all this energy into an authentic and existential behavior. And in that moment, when it's about life and death, right? Whether that's a small thing that you give away or something big, it all has impact if it was set up in a realistic way previously, right? If you had that transition, if you made sure that that transition worked for you as a character to get into that quietness, into that stillness, in renouncing the words, refusing to say things and expressing them through your signs, through your language, through your actions, and then kind of trusting that that behavior, how it is to live in a world where there is no sound, where there is no voice, where there is no classical music, no rock and roll, where there is just bass, right? Where there is just vibration, where there is just a membrane, where is just some oscillation, but there is no clear harmony. So we're reduced to our core senses. We are reduced to those core temperatures, to those core levels, and that's magnificent. That is a deep dive into our acting craft. And kudos to Emilia Jones, that besides learning sign language for 9 months straight and mastering it, but not only mastering the sign language, because no, she had also to sing and also to act in the same manner, at the same time, right? When she's singing and signing to the family and also acting out, right? Because she was performing a scene, she was living a scene. So kind of combining all these elements into a working scene for so many minutes on that high plateau of constant quality output like she did, Emilia Jones, respect. That was great work, great preparation that she had to put in. Previously, that was, working on a fish crawler, like really getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And really, how does that feel like, that experience of getting up every morning and cutting yourself and being out there and stinking like fish, right? And dealing with fish and all these, kind of hard and rugged and very bloody environment. And exercising all these things for an actor, I think that's a blessing. That's one of those roles we all, kind of look forward to, that we all wish to get once in our lives, to have so many things that you kind of have to train and get into your system in order to display a character in such a realistic way. That's what our business is all about. She's done a magnificent job in getting ready for that role, because I believe her. She was believable. Again, she was believing the moment. And how cool is that, to be in the story without necessarily hearing the story, right? All the time, as an audience as well. You were in the story, but you were not hearing the story, not all the time. You were hearing bits and pieces. And here, I think the film could have explored a little bit more. To my degree of understanding how the story evolved, I would have loved some more irrational moments and some moments that were explored from other angles, because it was totally there, right? You could have easily done that. Maybe she did, and she edited these moments out later on because it was not really serving the storyline, the plot, whatever, the action. That could be, but I could have wished for a little bit more of these little moments that were kind of taking me out completely and seeing this world really from that perspective. That would have been interesting to watch. But the way they are also were creating the apex through that behavior, that was really, really cool. And the way I think Sian Heder, the director, kind of brought everybody together and kind of weave this creature and weave the story with these great creators and actors, and the way she directed them and consistently kept that mood and kept that slow burn type of traction going on and alive, that fire bundle alive. Great job, absolutely. um, and again, it reminds us that without deep struggles, without deep confrontations with ourselves, and without deep obstacles and nearly impossible, mountain peaks that need to be kind of conquered throughout the story. And the harder it seems, the more interesting it is to watch what the character does to overcome that and to succeed and to have that glory, right, to shine bright, because we want to go through that catharsis. We want to believe that this character actually went through darkness, then the kind of rise from the ashes like Phoenix, and that everybody kind of had its part in it, and nobody was uninteresting or unnecessary, just an accessory of the story, that everybody was kind of fulfilling a purpose. I feel like for most of the time in this movie, that was the case. And it reminds us how important it is to search out for that struggle, to search out for the collision of forces. And the deeper the struggle, the more collision you have, the more interesting your character, your audition prep, your performance will be, because there is something to fight for. There are big ambitions. When something is at risk, then something becomes interesting. The more you risk, the more you succeed. So the higher the risks, the better, the more interesting, the greater focus you have also for yourself in interpreting that. If your mission is bland and flavorless, if you don't have a great approach and a leverage that really makes sense to you, that gives you, the opportunity to really speak out and perform in a magnificent way, then you're missing out on 95% of your potential, and you don't want to do that, right? Put everything in there, believe in that moment, believe in that moment and that circumstance, and you will see how beautiful things will pop up quite naturally. And then you will learn to control them and learn to channel them and direct them in a certain direction where it kind of feels right and where it serves the purpose to have a great impact with the camera lens or the audience, being there in this very instant. This is a great way of teaching. Your method is mind-blowing, coach. Thanks a lot. You deserve more subscribers. Thank you, Rosita. Thanks for pointing that out. You could actually subscribe, guys. Yes, subscribe to our content. It helps us a lot. It makes us all endeavor worthy. It's beautiful to watch when the subscriber count goes up, because it kind of shows it's not because of our ego, it's because it shows that our work gets appreciated and that more and more people also can value our little tools and instruments, our insights, and also, value the beautiful community, the comments, and everything that is kind of building up between all of us, because it's just a reflection. The master becomes the apprentice, and then again, he becomes the master, and then he becomes the apprentice again through this process. So the more feedback we have, the more we can grow, the better we can produce, and the more impact these tools can have for your life as well. And the greater, the further, the faster we can go all together. And that's such a beautiful quest. So join the creative community here at the COACHMC studio. Make sure also to join us on Instagram with the COACHMC, and on TikTok with our TikToks acting tactics coming up for you guys. All the best services, all the best tools possible, because we kind of, love this endeavor, because it gives us the idea that we are able to do something that kind of, pushes the needle into a positive direction, at least what we perceive as a positive direction, that you have the possibility to express yourself, that you have all the most powerful tools to do that in an authentic way, that you can be efficient with your time management, with your energy, and really find your passion, your niche, and then blossom up with that. I mean, this is what we should be, fighting for every day. And this is why we're creating this content. So let's get to the last part, and what we can learn and what we can use for our own purposes, for our own artistic display. Making a movie like that is a bit like a bet. Like, it is putting a serious bet on the belief that it will function, that this world will work, that the non-communicational part of the movie is as strong as the communicational part of the movie, that all characters are so intertwined and connected with each other, that you understand their struggles and their shortcomings and their inconsistencies, and you could kind of relate to each and every one of them, how they would actually tackle those insecurities, those inconsistencies, and those obstacles, and how they would actually deal with their struggle, and what they would do kind of to get better, right? So you could kind of perceive the world through the eyes and through the perspective of each and every character. And that is so, so important, so fundamental about a working storyline, about a certain plot. So there's always a logic coming back to you, even though some of the choices of the characters might seem irrational at that point, when they are performing them in that very instant, they make sense on a brighter scale, on a higher scale, on a bigger scale. You kind of see what kind of impact they had and how necessary they were. And sometimes I feel a lot of creators, when it comes down to audition prep, to create a new product, a new speech, they take, like I said, they take certain things for too granted. They don't exercise them enough, not thoroughly enough, not passionately enough. They're not searching for an alternative. They're always choosing the path of least resistance. They're always going the easy way instead of making it even more complicated. So you have to work even harder to get to a solution, because guess what? Not everybody's doing that. And when you get to that type of solution where you worked a bit harder, a bit more passionate, a bit more intrinsic with your material, by really absorbing all the nuances and paying very close attention to all the details, by doing that, you kind of, you grow a thicker skin. You get way more into the process. You get way more involved with your material, with your source material. Your character becomes more believable. And guess what? You have more fun in the process, because you're doing something quite unique instead of just, saying some lines and living the audition right in that moment. And that's not so hard to do. It's just more an exercise of your mindset to really get in tune with different instruments. It's an exercise of your mindset, of allowing your ego to admit that you don't have all the solutions already, of allowing your ego also to admit that there's so much else to discover, and so many movies to watch, and so many different instruments to kind of try out, exercise for themselves, and exercise for yourself, and then see how they impact the audience. It's sometimes a game of trial and error, of course, but not being scared of doing, being scared of doing something because that could lead to a mistake. That is the mistake. Because if you're just doing something without being too worried about committing any mistake, then you just will learn. Whether or not that is a success, it's a learning process. If you just look at it from the mindset perspective that, oh, I need to succeed with that, otherwise I won't do it, because then it could result into a success, into a mistake, and that will kind of, that will be just a shameful, and then you just don't do it right from the start. That is the mistake already, because you prevent yourself from making a groundbreaking experience that probably you need to kind of, step up your game in such a way that now you have all the tools together to really deliver in a unique way every time you get called to action. Do we have any other questions in the chat room? No creativity can happen naturally when there is a formula, right? I mean, creativity can happen naturally when there is a formula. Absolutely. And there is something that we call a hunch, that we call an instinct. There is something that we call sixth sense, that we call there is something in the air sometimes when we are clear, when there is nothing else distracting us. We can sometimes grasp a notion of something, that hunch, that instinct, that gut feeling that is telling us something that might not be a perfect construct, or the ultimate key, or the final solution to something, but it leads you on the path that eventually will lead to the final solution, to that ultimate success, to that perfect circle. It kind of tips off a reaction that will follow up with another reaction that will kind of ignite that chain reaction mechanism, where things finally get processed in another way. And usually that's stepping away from your ego and not looking at it from a perspective of, I need a system first and then I can execute it. No, I trust myself that I will fill and find first, and will find something that just belongs to me, and trusting my instinct that is interesting enough to tell a compelling story. And about the process of finding then all the right tools and mechanisms to kind of put that into display so it gets appreciated. That transition is where you have the combination of your emotional core and your rational apparatus, where both things kind of finally work with each other, and now you get a formula. When both things are adding up, now you have a result. When both things are merging, you get a new product. And that new product needs to be refurbished, for sure, needs to be kind of re-engineered over and over again, for sure. Needs to be analyzed and exercised and magnified, for sure. But it is already a product. It can only get better from there. So you start with that instinct. You start with that belief. You start with that holistic view. You start with the vision, and then you kind of dig into the details. You explore the boundaries, and you add the tools that you need in order to proceed. Does that make sense? Grazie per i consigli, bellissimo canale, Lori Hila. Lori Hila just said that this is a beautiful channel, and thanks for the tips. Of course, be my guest. You're welcome. I'm much obliged. Thank you guys for your time. And it's always a pleasure for us here at the COACHMC studio to deliver these type of messages. So thank you so much. Anyboo, this is really great, inspiring. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. Of course, that's what I got from the movie. This is a breakdown, right? This is what we can do just by sitting down with ourselves and really analyzing the things and really understanding what they're actually telling us and where they're coming from, and then kind of reverse that process and engineer it for ourselves. And that is the beauty of creativity. That is the beauty of having that creative community. Yes. So I hope this gets you and you see and appreciate the importance. So coming back to what the third most important part is, it is a bet. And every time you place a bet, you are focused, because you might lose that bet, right? And you don't want to do that. So you're focused, you're highly focused, you're hyperly focused, I might add. And when you're hyperly focused, of course, that could lead to friction and overly being tension and all that. Yeah. But generally speaking, that's a good thing, because now you're really there. Now you're focused. Now you're paying attention. Now you're active, right? And now you're censoring something. So in this way, characters are believable. They are true, right? Because they are placed in there and they are connected with each other. They're not just placed in there and are isolated. They're not just, they're connected. They are all unified through this mission, because everybody is sick of something. Everybody wants to make that transition. And sometimes that transition of not being sick of something, of liberating your character from the chuckles and the chains and the obstacles, that means to kind of, cross the interests of someone else in the story that you might cherish or even love. And, there's another conflict immediately popping up. And how you deal with that conflict is very telling and very entertaining, and how you get through that and kind of involving everybody without hurting anybody too much. But that you might hurt somebody in order to get your dreams fulfilled and to kind of, being able to shine. That might happen, but that doesn't mean that you're an evil person. And I think that transition was shown nicely by everybody, and was put in also the way also the coach, the vocal coach, and this new element was kind of introduced, and how important it was to the second part of the movie and to the later development of the story was very good timing. I feel that everybody, was there for a reason, except probably Miles, the boyfriend. It wasn't as strong as everything else and compelling as everything else. You couldn't really believe that she was also trying to escape from her home turf because of him. I think he wasn't that strong of a pull, but he was serving a purpose. The music was serving a purpose. There was great songs, beautiful, inspiring melodies, great choices of songs also intertwined into the story. And it was a forward motion that got a bit more traction towards the end, where it really was emotional and really was heartfelt, and it really touched me also. So that was interesting to explore, that such a story that was told in a very, I would almost say, not because I'm not saying it wasn't, touching me before in the first part, but it was set up in a very, rational, kind of distant, very still, kind of observing way, right? The camera, the movement, the action, everything was kind of following up very nicely, and almost in a severe manner, right? You were in there, but it was kind of keeping that healthy distance, and then by the end you were really kind of getting to the story and really bound to the story, and really connected through that umbilical cord, that emotional cord, and you really were feeling the characters as well. And then kind of tears started to kick in, and it was nice to observe, and also surprising, because I really wouldn't have thought that I would get to this point. but it really got me there, and quite naturally. So that always tells me the story was working in the characters as well. Again, Emilia Jones, prego, grazie. Of course, Care Life Services. It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with us for so long. So again, for us actors, communicators, entertainers, performers watching this movie, the three biggest things that I got, my takes from them is: believe in your stillness, believe in your momentum and your quietness, absorb your body first before even saying something, get in tune with your character and how he feels and what he's going through in that very instant. I mean, it might sound like a mundane audition prep tip, but it isn't really, because we take the words for too granted. And this movie shows us in such a nice way that words aren't always that important. If we nail our inner consistency, if we let our core shine through, if we can, go through that process of core and mask and have that kind of disclosure in front of the camera, words aren't that important. It's the actions that speaks, the action that speaks louder than words. It's what we're doing. It's what the intention of the non-communication is, more than what our active communication is doing. And so without that shield, with that was interesting to watch, how you have to kind of get to a more naked, more truthful ground of storytelling for your character. And that definitely we can always use to get in tune for ourselves. And really, like, as a second thing, how important it is to observe that, to really observe that behavior, how you feel and how you move and how you act and how you react to things, and really get realistic with the behavior of the character by perceiving what the environment is like and how you're connected to the environment. By realizing that and doing that kind of homework, you are immediately more in tune with what's happening, and the reaction, as a matter of fact, will be more natural and realistic and more spontaneous and more believable. And place your bets, make it risky for yourself, do something extraordinary. Try, like, sometimes when you were watching the sign language, certain expressions, the actors were taking the expression from somewhere else. It feels like they were grabbing the words out of the air, right? They were kind of forming them in their hands. There were some exaggerated and grand, like, body maneuvers, but it never felt, to me personally, it never felt too much. That was never throwing me off. So it was nice to see how they were kind of summoning the emotion, taking it out of their core. And you could almost like see that process, especially with Troy Kotsur, who was doing an incredible job of getting in tune with the emotion he wanted to express through the sign language. And that's something definitely we can take from that. How important it is to really nail the emotion, get in tune with that emotion, have that emotion clear. Sometimes it's just not clean enough, right? Sometimes we're sloppy and lazy with that expression, and we take it for granted that we have the words that can cover up everything. But the behavior is so interesting to watch if we just believe in the situation, if we just believe what the character is going through, if we truly believe what he feels and senses, then it's an automatic transition of being there and absorbing that environment and perceiving it for real and taking it in. And then it becomes it becomes really close. It gets really close, and that is beautiful. And place your bets, risk something, stay connected with the characters and follow them wherever they might go, and just play the ball back and forth and see what happens, right? Explore that, and never give up, and always try to put always something on top of it, and always try to explore a little bit more, a couple of facets more, a couple of nuances more. Is there still something that I can add to this toolbox? If yes, let's analyze it. Let's extrapolate it. If it's there, and if it's tangible, and if it's effective, and if it helps me to step up my game, by all means, take it in, right? Take it in. Don't leave it out. Stay connected with that. Don't isolate yourself, and don't value your inner voices more than the outside reaction. Because sometimes even a great outside reaction, we might judge it as something negative because we have already a preconceived negative projection of that. And that movie, Coda, it teaches us to not be that judgmental, to really kind of hold that and bet, place your bet, risk something, and believe in that something that you have to give to the audience, because it's always extraordinary when we create. We take it for so granted. Again, it's a privilege to be so passionate. It's a privilege to invest time in your craft, in your momentum, in your development, in improving what you got already, and maybe adding something new to your spices. That is already the work of somebody who believes in himself. So don't live that projection. Always stay focused on that track. And yeah, try to find that niche where you feel the most comfortable in the beginning and explore all the boundaries like these marvelous actors did. So I want to thank um, this movie. I want to thank Apple this time for buying this movie and being also the first digital content creator, a streaming platform that won the Oscar for best film. I want to thank Apple for believing this product. Sometimes big corporations do also great and magnificent things. They just picked up this movie at Sundance Film Festival. They knew it's gonna be a success. They invested in it and then distributed it, and they got 3 Oscars and many other awards out of it. So big up to all the developers. Big up to Sian Heder for this terrific directing and also co-writing the script, and to all the actors that were involved in this project. It was a nicely told, very solid story, nicely explored by all the players. Emilia Jones, of course, and Troy Kotsur. I mean, both protagonists, I might say, from this flick. I mean, they did probably they fulfilled the biggest impact for us as an audience, and it's great to see such craftsmanship and in such a unique manner and such connectivity with all the actors. And I think it was a great piece of work also for them. It can be for us as well if we understand what was going on, like we did in this video, kind of deconstruct it and use it for our own endeavors. Thank you so much, creative community, for sticking with us till the end. Make sure to subscribe, to hit the bell, to contact me through COACHMC.studio if you got any wish, any desires, any questions, any remarks. Leave some comments in the comment section below. That's super important as well. Shoot this video out to your creative community. Make sure to get bigger with us, to get greater with us, to get further with us. And see you next time with the next video on this channel. Now you're ready to perform. And now it's time to close the red book.